Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Elevation Association podcast, Elevation Experience podcast, or Elevation Association podcast experience. I don't care, whatever. Everyone gets the idea. Want to welcome everyone back to the show. Thank you for listening. And we're going to pick up where we left off last time, where we were talking about, are you ready for an associate? This is, I think, a fairly I think a lot of people are confused about this, and I think that they run off of feel. So I'm excited to dive back into this and get into some more detail on things that we know are important to track before you know you're ready. Um, yeah, and I think that Jared, I'm excited to hear your thoughts on some of the stuff we're going to go over today. I know you've had a lot of experience with some of this stuff, so yeah, man, let's get rolling.
Yeah, I think if you have to have the right mindset going into this, and it's hard to sit down and evaluate whether you're really in the right mindset or not. It really has to be a win-win for both. You really have to say, I really want this associate to succeed, like for reals. I I don't want just some relief. Right? I'm busy. I want somebody to come in. How can this be a win-win for both of us where we are just both gonna come out and kill it and feel good about it and be good? And it does take a lot of that. And then once you figure that out, once you get yourself in that space, the challenge that I found is getting your team on board and getting
Yeah,
them ready to, because the dynamics change. It's not, you don't bring in, because you bring in one person, you don't bring in one relationship. Right, if you have a team of 10, you bring in 10 or 11 new relationships, because that associate's gonna have a relationship with each one of those team members that you have, so, yeah, getting your team strong and preparing them for a leader doctor is a really kind of a difficult thing to do.
well, I think that this is why you have core values. Right? Like, so because it's extremely difficult, or it can be depending on the dynamics of your team. But if you have core values and they're well defined and everybody understands what those are, that's on your team, and then the associate is shown them prior to hire, so not after they're hired, so that that they're a good fit. That's huge. So, because that sets the stage for the dynamics of the team. And, we beat this drum so loud and so hard and so often is get your core value set up, get your core value. Every successful business coach or leader ever has said, from Tony Robbins to the military has said, get your core values right. Right. So I think that's, yeah, hugely important. And then I think you have to say, okay, once you have all that, there's some little finite things, like little things that I think you did really well, Jared. And it was, how do you introduce the associate to the patients? What are you going to do? So we did a photo shoot. We did, we rolled it out so that it was like exciting news, and emails were sent out and texts were sent out. And so by the time patients came in, they knew I was there. They hadn't met me yet, but they knew I was there. Right. So, I thought that was a really good rollout and preparation, and then the actual handoff. If I was walking by, you would grab me and introduce me, and it's stuff like that. And so there were a lot of points made to give me points of contact, I guess, is what I'm just trying to say.
Yeah, it was, I think the mentality for us was, we're not just gonna try this guy out for a minute. Let's see how he does. It's, hey, we have invested the time and effort ahead of time to make sure that we feel pretty good about the fit of Dr. Nelson, and we are going to introduce him as, I think we tried to avoid the word associate. We just tried to,
Yeah,
tried to use just adding another doctor,
adding a doctor. Mhm.
because some people use that term associate almost as a weapon, almost as like, hey, you're not there yet, right? Like,
Yeah,
and it can be psychologically um oppressing sometimes, being like, okay, but I think we tried to avoid it, be like, hey, we have another doctor here, Dr. Dan Nilsson. We didn't use the term partner yet, I don't think, just because we
Yeah.
hadn't by the partnership, but, we tried to make it very clear that, that he was in our practice and we were, wanting to make this long term. So, I think one of the challenges that we came up against with our own team is you have a little bit of the loyalty dynamics,
Mhm.
right? You've got team members that like, "Oh, I really like the way that, Dr. Nelson's bringing this style. Why did Dr. Hill, why don't you adopt this?" Where, "Dr. Hill never did it this way, and I prefer this is the way I've always done it. I don't want to change." And there's those loyalty dynamics which you have to break down. And just a little tip of what I did behind the scenes always times is if somebody ever came to me, I would always defend the other person, whether it was the associate or the other assistant or whatever it was. Always challenge why they are, and not that I wasn't grateful for loyalty, but I encouraged loyalty to Wood River Dental, not loyalty to a person. Because that's where you really have to drop your ego. You really have to be like, this is what's the best thing for the practice growth is not personal. Yeah, thanks. Let's, form team A and team B because that's when things blow up fast.
Yeah, I think the other things that you did well was put the assistants into a rotation as well. So they had to come out of their comfort zone and they had to work with me and then go back and work with you and then work with me. You know what I mean? And there's ways to set up that rotation, but that way you don't end up with survivor type team ups, where camp A and camp B and, uh, some some maybe destructive dynamics seep in through that way. And I thought that was really brilliant. The other my favorite story, to tell when I first became, an associate here, so I was coming out of the military. I'd only been here for, like, 2, 3 weeks, and, I get called in, one of the hygienists said that they're ready for an exam, so I walk in, and the guy looks me straight in the face and goes, "You're not Doctor Hill," and, to this day, it's my favorite, like, just hilarious that, like, I was like, "Oh, no, no, I'm not. This is true. I will go find Doctor Hill for you." On the same token, I've been called Doctor Hill more than once, so it's, the dynamics are funny, and I think that you can't be offended by that, no in no way, shape, or form. I've had patients look me straight in the face and say, I'd rather see Doctor Hill," no apology, just saying, looking right at me and said, "I'd rather see Doctor Hill." And then it's not like, "Oh, well, you just made me mad." It's, "Let me go find him for you," and, you just can't be upset over that stuff. And I think that that's, again, check your frail dental ego. That's not part of it. That's just, that's okay. People can have preferences. It's not a big deal. Um, but I think that there's also, I think we should probably address that there are some psychological needs of the team as well. I think you were kind of touching on that, Jared, and I think there's 4 things that are important for a team to have, as far as their psychological needs. I think they need to feel safe. So there's safety, there's clarity, fairness, and growth. And so with safety, it's easy. The team just needs to feel safe with another doctor. We've all heard the horror stories of the doc that chucks instruments or has a conniption fit over, whatever, or lashes out at the assistant. That, if that's happening, that team's not going to feel safe, right? So they need to feel safe. They need to feel safe psychologically, physically, mentally, emotionally, and then clarity. I think it's important that the team knows who's in charge of what. This can get a little bit tricky with we've seen this, right, Jared, where with an associate, it's who's in charge of what. Because the doc's like, "Hey, I'm the freaking doc. Like, what I say goes, right?" And it's like, does it go? Do you have your policies and your processes and your procedurals written out and laid out, so everyone's on the same page? But there can be a dynamic and a power struggle. We've watched that firsthand, where the associate and maybe someone else on the team has a little bit of a power struggle. So it needs to be important that there's clarity there. Fairness. I actually hate the word fairness. So because fairness is, let me rephrase that. Equity is the word I hate. Fairness is a word that my teenagers throw at me all the time. It's not fair. It's not fair. It's not fair. Well, and and I've heard it in offices as well. But I think what we mean here is how are patients and procedures being distributed, right? So I think that we need to look for some type of balance. Maybe the word is balance instead of fairness, right? But there will be a point where if you are cherry picking procedures without telling the associate that you're going to do that beforehand, that they're going to cry foul ball, and that you're going to hear the word fair come up. So I think that's, why I want to use that term. Finally, there's growth, right? So what do they need as far as growth? Well, are they going to see having an associate as a chance to grow, or are they going to see it as a threat? Right. And again, I think that takes, if you come in prepping the team, then they'll see it as a chance to grow and not as a threat.
Yeah, I think the reason why we didn't have as much of a problem with this, Stan, as a lot of other offices do, is because of the way we set up our associateship and partnership. I when you came on very well educated and experienced, and had done a residency, and had been in Japan for 3 years, and had I had confidence that you could do really well, great work with it in high value procedures as well. So when you came on, our understanding was these are patients of Wood River Dental, not Dr. Hill. Yes, some people are gonna have preferences, right? You're not Dr. Hill. Those are usually the people that you don't want, right? Those are usually the patients that are more difficult anyways. But our mentality was, whether Dr. Hill sees them or whether I see them, because we have an equal split partnership, it's just better that they're seen, that they're comfortable with whoever they're comfortable with. And then whoever they're comfortable with, let's get it done, and get it done as fast as we can, and as good as we can. And then that's more profitable for the practice. It's better for the patients. That way we don't take offense if someone's like, oh, I want to see Dr. Nelson. Oh, they've got a big procedure. I don't have to talk them into or cherry pick this procedure for my ego. If he does it, awesome. Patient gets taken care of, good for the overall health of the practice, and vice versa. And I think that's hard for the owner doctor to have that mentality, because it could very well mean a dip in your earnings at the beginning, right? So you have to play the long game in this, and that's part of the psychological conundrum that you go into. Is the long game in this is, what does that look like in a year or 2 years, right? Not next week or 2 weeks or a month or 2 months. It could hurt. It could hurt. But at the end of the day, what is best long term? And so that's part of that clear onboarding plan that you have. You
Yeah.
have to have that in your mind. Be like, okay, this next 2, 3, 4 months, we may lose a little bit of money, right? And I got to be ready for that as I'm prepping to then ramp up, right? This slow down in order to speed up. That means your finances too. That doesn't just mean you and your procedures, but you're slowing down, but you're taking advantage of that slowdown. You're not freaking out. You're taking advantage of that slowdown time. Okay, I've got a little more time. What do I need to focus on? What do I need to prioritize on? And taking that time so you can ramp up and speed up to higher than where you were previously. And that's that clear onboarding plan. It's got to be clear, or else you're going to freak out and you're going to panic, and things are going to blow up.
Yep. Yeah, and I think, if you've got a good onboarding plan, I think at a minimum you need a 30-day heavily supervised and supported onboarding plan. Just the onboarding. I'm not even talking about mentorship. I'm just talking about onboarding. I think that's huge. And then, like you said, I think that well, we talked about it earlier. I think that the focus should be outcome, right? So don't get too bogged down by the means by which they get to the outcome, but monitor the outcomes. Are you getting the outcomes that are consistent with what your expectations are? If you're not, then you probably need to go look at how are they going about doing things? Why is our patient acceptance rate really low now all of a sudden? The outcome is poor. What's happening in the process, right? Or maybe we're getting some, poor clinical outcome. Okay, well, why? Do we need to relook at this and see what's going on? And now do we have to decide that we need to go into a mentorship role? Right. So some of these things are unknowns when you bring in an associate. You really don't know. Like, it's not like we can sit them down for a 3-week working interview, you know what I mean? And find out how good their margins are and do they understand occlusion and, whatever. And so those are they awkward with patients? They interviewed well, but they're really weird with patients. They talk down to people, you know what I mean? Like, you don't really know until you bring someone on. And so that's the other thing is your contract should probably have something in there that's a clause for an early release. If they are not clinically or socially up to your standards, then there should be a clause in the contract that says, yeah, you're not, and you can set that up 30, 60, 90, 6 month, whatever you want to put in there, but there should be a clause and one for them as well. If they feel like, wow, this is not at all what I was expecting. We talked about that new doc earlier, Jared. You were talking about him that he's locked in a very ugly, deep contract in a situation where he was misled on the information by a corporate office, and that's really unfortunate. So now he's in a position where he's maybe having to get attorneys, and it's going to be a difficult exit for him. So I think in a strategic move, make sure you write in clauses for both.
Yeah, and then, moving forward too, what if it does work out, like, if it is going great, what are their expectations? What is the career path for them, right?
Yeah,
Some people just wanna be associates, and that's fine, but if you think that they just wanna be an associate and they think they wanna buy in and be a partner, that's a problem, right? So you need to clarify that, right? If you're looking for a future partnership, here is the buy-in option. Here's how it's going to work. Here are the clear timelines, and here's the criteria. And then you set that expectation ahead of time. So it's not, so there's no jaded feelings 2 or 3 years. Oh, it's not quite ready. Can't afford to have you come on yet. Blah, blah, blah. That is the most frustrating thing for an associate because they have expectations, they have goals, they have a timeline that they want to meet as well. So make sure those are talked about ahead of time and make sure it's very clear. If this works out, this is our trial period. Here's what the buy-in option looks like, and then you move forward or not, right?
or not. I want to go back, Jared, um, and talk about something that you were discussing earlier on, and that's the strategy of bringing an associate on. You mentioned that it shouldn't be just bring them on because you want to, whatever, lighten your load or whatever. That it should be you mentioned that it needed to be a strategic fit. So, why are you adding associate? Because an associate's not a tactic, right? It's the strategy of where you're going in 3, 5, 10 years. And so I would love it if you would kind of hit some more on that, maybe talk a little bit deeper on this idea of it being a strategic move.
Yeah, so you need to sit down and determine, kind of the growth and trajectory of your practice, and we'd love to sit down and help you do this and go through this. But in 10 years, 5 to 10 years, what does your practice look like? What does Wood River Dental Care look like? And then you need to clarify a couple things. Are you creating the capacity to serve more people? So my strategic goal was I had an office of um 5 operatories. Sorry, I can't remember if it was 4 or 5 or 6. It's been a while. I had like 4, I think it was 5 operatories, but I knew that I knew I wanted Wood River Dental Care to grow. So I first of all created the capacity. So I bought a new building. We had the capacity for 9 ops. We didn't pull them all out, but I was creating the capacity in order to bring on another person. If you're stuck in a small office of 3 operatories, 4 operatories, you want to bring on an associate, you're going to run into a capacity problem, and that's going to be really, really frustrating. You can get creative with the times, but you're going to be crawling all over each other, and it's going to be frustrating. Are you planning on doing a multi-doctor, multi-location group? Like, what is your strategy there, right? 5 to 10 years. If so, how does that associate play into that strategy? And then, um, maybe you're creating or talking about your retirement, your succession plan, right? So maybe you do want to cut back. If so, be very clear on that. Say, "Hey, look, I'm looking for an associate to come on, take on this role because in 5 years I plan on cutting back. And this is what that looks like." So, how does the associate fit into the 10-year vision of the practice, right? So of Woodriver Dental Care, how's it, and then what are you, as the owner, what are your financial goals and how does that associate play into those financial goals? Meaning, if everything worked out perfectly for 5 years, right? Let's say they come on and then they become a partner. What does that look like? Sit down and write that out. I'm practicing X amount of days, taking home X amount of money. This is what it looks like. So that way you can kind of work backwards as you're putting all that together, right? This is a And I said, because maybe you're saying in the morning, I want some time to work out in the morning, so I'm only gonna go in until 10. These are the goals that you're all setting, so I'm only gonna work actually 6 hours a day, but this is not just a production or growth decision, right? This is a life decision. This is a leadership decision, how you are leading your practice, and really, it's also part of your legacy as well, right? Like, I'm setting this person up for success, which is absolutely part of your legacy that you're leaving for not just other team members, right? How many practices fall apart after an associate comes in? The transition's rocky. The owner leaves, makes a ton of money, and then all of a sudden the whole thing blows up and falls apart. They leave and go work for other practices, right? That's happened. We've seen it. So it's part of your legacy as well for your team. Are you taking care of them? Okay, this is how they're going to have the most success because they're probably going to continue working after you leave.
So let's transition, Jared. I'm gonna I want to share. I said we would share this checklist, and I'm literally gonna rip down it. We're gonna just go through it really quick, because it is available on School Elevation Association's page on School, SKOOL. This is We're happy to share this. It will be available there, or you can write really fast. So however you want to do this. Uh, you're probably ready for an associate if these things. You ready? Here we go. Okay, number one, numbers and demand. So you have an active patient base of 2,500 to 3,000, or very strong growth, right? New patients, 30 to 40 plus a month consistently, or you have unbelievable retention. Okay, so your hygiene, you need 2+ full-time hygienists fully booked. Hygiene is booked at least 6+ weeks out. Your doctor production is consistently near 900 to $1 million, and with limited room to compress this schedule anymore. Okay, so you've kind of maxed out. You're right about $1 million in production. Reappointment rate should be 85 to 90% plus. Okay, your operations and systems. You should have written, clinical, and administrative protocols in place. You should have standard new patient hygiene business visit systems. You should have a scorecard in place with provider level KPIs. This is something you review weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly. Clear onboarding and mentorship plan for the new doctor. This is also written out. This isn't just something that's in your head. You need to be able to see if you're financially ready, right? So number 3, financial readiness. You've modeled when I say modeled, again, this is written out. You have it like spreadsheets or whatever you need. So you're gonna be able to model your associate compensation, your additional overhead. So taking into account the increase in supplies, lab, staffing, facility, et cetera. Your target profit margin. So you should be looking at 10 to 20% plus on associate production. And you can absorb 3 to 6 months of transition without panic if growth is gradual. So that's something, again, we talked about that. Number 4 is psychological and cultural readiness. All right. You're emotionally ready to share patience and leadership, and your team is aligned on core values and excited about the growth, and you have time and energy to mentor another doc, or at a minimum onboard another doc, right? So even if it's not a mentorship, you have the mental capacity, the physical capacity, the emotional capacity to mentor this other doc. If several of these things are a no, then your next step is not to hire an associate. It's fix the underlying systems and start to build the growth engine.
So what you're saying is to be ready for an associate, the math has to math,
Yeah.
right? The systems have to be into place and you have to have the right mindset, right?
Yeah.
Those kind of three broad, if you could put it in a broad way, then that would be the way to put it.
Yeah, it sounds easy, right? Like, "Yeah, I'm ready." Well, I just think that it's really important. I mean, this is a checklist that we don't take lightly. I went through it very quickly, but it's really important because so often, I think the underlying question is always, "Am I ready for an associate?" And it's based off of feel. Like there's no data backing it up. There's no systems or protocols. Again, people are they work in an office where we just take for granted the things that we do. They seem to happen secondary in nature, or it just is a part of the process that maybe never was written, but it's a force of habit. And so we take those things for granted and not realizing that, oh my gosh, if someone has become new in this, it's going to be a freaking chaotic mess because I don't have anything written down. I don't have any way of tracking my numbers. I don't know if I'm actually, if my schedule can handle it. I don't know if the team dynamics can handle it. There's all these questions that go through your head. And if you're not tracking, writing, bouncing things off of people that have been through it. That's the other thing is like talk to people that have hired associates, see what works, see what doesn't. I mean, that's a huge part of it is that you don't have to go at this alone. I think so often we talk about this quite a bit because we're so heavy on the EA tribal concept is that dentistry is a lonely profession too often. And all too often, dentists just kind of white knuckle it and go at it alone. It's not necessary to, especially in today's climate. Like, there's no reason to be doing everything by yourself and just like blindly feeling your way through the dark. Like, oh, I think I need an associate. I think I could probably handle, bringing someone on. I think my patient load's enough. I don't really know, but feels like I'm busy. I'm tired. At the end of the day, those aren't good measurements. You need to have a way to really go through a checklist and say, all right, I and even then, even if you do that, you're still gonna come into to it with some intrepidation of like, "Oh, am I really ready?"
Yeah, it's next weekend we have our outfitters course on Friday and Saturday, and that course is really great because it goes deeper into accountability charts, organization design, associate pathways, KPIs, how to set up your systems. I mean, it's an intense 2-day course. It'd be a great day. It'd be a great way to kind of start to make sure you have those systems in order and processes and protocols and so forth in order, your vision and so forth. And then just make sure you are set and ready to go. We're happy also to help you look over KPIs and numbers and scorecards and one really cool thing is we've got Dominica coming up and Alaska coming up, these trips where you want to talk about mindset, right? You want to talk about the psychological aspect of being ready for an associate or partner. Like you said, talk with people who have done it or who are doing it. That's hard to do sometimes, but that's why we create these environments. We create these getaways, these escapes where you can, hang around and sit on a surfboard and talk with somebody about it in a non-confrontational. You're not making them uncomfortable by asking these questions. It's like part of the tribe. This is why we get together is to share these things, to share these experiences, to work these things out together. It's a give situation. I guarantee if you're listening to this, you have something to give and share that's valuable to other people of the tribe. And that's the value of being a part of EA too. But um, it's a great opportunity for growth, associate, partner, if it's something that you're seriously looking at or interested in, take these words to heart, go to school, find the resources that you need. If you have any questions, reach out, let us know.
Awesome. Well, I love this topic, to Jared's point, come hang out with us. Let's talk about it some more. Go to elevationassociation.com. You can reach out to us there too. We're always happy just to talk. So if you just want to like bounce some ideas and like maybe network or find somebody, maybe we can point you in the right direction to someone help out. Maybe you need some legal help. We don't do anything legal, but we have resources and we can share our partners with you that can help you to set up contracts or whatever you need. Reach out to us. We're happy to point you in the right direction. And as always, we appreciate you guys listening, and we'll talk to you next week. So have a great week, everybody.
Thanks.